Hi there, my name's Andrew Gill and I'm going to talk to you today about electromagnetic fields. Why? Well, EMFs are a key topic of interest when you're thinking about the potential environmental impacts that are associated with power generation, such as through offshore wind, and the transmission of electricity. This is a topic that we've been working on for many years now, um, but it's a topic that is kind of raised in profile occasionally and then gone back into the background. And so this has led to irregular research outputs. It's led to patchy and variable knowledge, which is not particularly useful when we're trying to really move the topic area forward to address the questions that are raised. And there's currently a lot of interest. Stakeholders are concerned about EMF. Regulators have been asking what we know about EMF, and developers have become keen to address it, particularly when we're thinking about floating offshore wind. We need further evidence, and we need better knowledge and better knowledge exchange. And also, really importantly, we need consistency in the approaches to understanding EMFs and how they interact with receptor species. So I'm going to talk about a couple of activities today that are part of a series of ongoing collaborative initiatives. The first activity was an EMF technical workshop where we drew together the expertise of different disciplines to provide scientifically robust and agreed ways forward of enhancing the knowledge base related to EMF. We focused on the knowledge requirements of consistency and realism in modelling and measuring of EMF, and it was held in person over 2 intensive days at the Royal Institution in London back in January last year. And we had a unique group of electrical engineers, modellers, physical oceanographers, geophysicists and geomagnetic field specialists, and our own biological expertise. The workshop aim was to provide an agreed and standardised approach for estimating EMFs associated with subsea cables within the environment where they're found, with using expert agreement. The objectives were first to agree fundamental aspects of calculating modelling EMF in both 2 and 3D for HVDC direct current and HVAC alternating current subsea cables, and then to determine how you should account for the cable EMF interaction with the local geomagnetic field, because that's part of the total environment, and how to account for the what's called motionally induced fields associated with water movement, such as tidal currents underwater. And based on these two, we then presented an initial agreed approach to modelling and measuring EMF, and the idea there is to provide enough knowledge to support licensing decision making, to look at future R&D to improve our confidence in the evidence base, to sort of set the approach for a standardized approach for understanding and dealing with EMF, and key knowledge gaps and recommendations. And this is all set within a report which is available via the Crown Estates Marine Data Exchange, as you can see here. The next activity relates to another OWEC funded project called the Flowers Project. The acronym is about Floating Offshore Wind Environmental Response to Stresses, which is currently an ongoing project, collaborative between ourselves and the Scottish Government. Within the Flowers Project, there is an EMF work package with a specific aim to assess a counter rate between sensitive species and the EMF environment associated with dynamic cables. The aim is to be met through the objectives of defining the actual EMF environment that's associated with the cables on the seabed and the water column, and that will build on the models that came from the EMF technical workshop I've just described. Then to verify the EMF models through field data collection at operational cables, and then estimate the temporal and spatial overlap between selected sensitive species and cabling routes, and all bringing this all together as a kind of version 1 method to estimate the likelihood of species encounter as a proxy for the potential risk of EMF to target species. So the EMF fieldwork that's planned is basically a series of surveys going out to operational cables, working with offshore transmission operators, and using a magnetometer to measure the magnetic field associated with the cables. And we're due to go to different geographic locations because we know that the interaction of the cables with the Earth's magnetic field can actually change the EMF associated, and therefore we want to go to different places around the country to verify this hypothesis for both AC and DC cables, and then use the fieldwork data and information about the cable characteristics to apply to the models that are being developed in the workshop. And then at the same time look at data that is available on species distribution and take that distribution data so that we know where the animals are and how likely they are to be there, and then look at that in relation to where the cables are, and that will produce a first stage method to assess the likelihood of encounter with respect to the species of interest and the cable. So what we're looking for in a methodological approach is to produce something like this heat map, which has the cables on there. The cable data that we've got from the field will then be added in terms of extent of EMF associated with the cable, and then the distribution of the species of interest will then highlight areas where there is a potential likelihood of encounter being higher than other places. And in this case, the purple areas would indicate areas of higher likelihood of encounter than the yellow areas. And hopefully you see this could be very useful when it comes to the realities of assessing EMF in relation to specific species, and then we can focus on the knowledge base required in the data collection for those particular areas. So that gives you a little bit of information about some of the work that's being involved that we are doing on electromagnetic fields. Hopefully you found that of interest, and any questions, be happy to answer them. Thanks very much for listening.